You're tuning in to the online broadcast network, AFTERBUZZ TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads in over 150 countries, and your number one source for after-show entertainment. AFTERBUZZ TV, the destination for TV superfans, producing aftershows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows, interviewing celebrities and showrunners, and bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
Hey there, AfterBuzzers. Welcome back to AfterBuzz TV's Narcos After Show. We are here breaking down Season 1, Episode 3, The Men of Always. My name is Isaac Johnson. You can follow me on Twitter at Isaac Johnson. And I'm joined once again by my friendly associate, Ashley Chatman.
Hey guys, welcome to Episode 3. Tweet at me, Ashley_Chatman, Twitter, also on Instagram. And then I'm also in the chat too, so please feel free to share your comments, your questions, your theories. Love to hear it.
Yeah, head over to youtube.com, AfterBuzz TV. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave us a comment. If you're watching live, chat with us.
Yeah.
We'd love to talk to you.
Join the fun.
Yeah, so, man, what an interesting episode. Pablo there, it seems to be trying to move along his political aspirations. Met with some what's the word? Gosh, I can't think of the word. He's met with
opposition or
opposition.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
some interesting opposition.
This is why you're here.
Yeah, I'll be here all night, everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for saying you're going to stay on the show. That's,
yes. Can I just say what'd you think? How crazy that opening scene was? I mean, anybody else was on pins and needles.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
I mean, we don't have to go in depth because Pablo took care of that for us.
Yeah, okay. So, but with the gun, he was.
I mean, it was just a very interesting scene.
Yeah. Are we talking about him and Velez? Or
yes.
Okay.
Yes, very interesting scene. Great opening. I mean, just things like that. You know, just sort of showing. Just, you know, I mean, he starts it off like, I'm the most loved man in Colombia and you know, everything that's happening. And you just sort of see how much people are really soaking into, you know, this persona that he has built for himself. I mean, and obviously, you know, groupies, they do a lot to try and get the attention of people who are in the public eye. But I mean, it was just, I don't know, it was just such a really interesting scene for them to show as a part of just how powerful he is at this point and just what he can do. I mean, I was on pins and needles for that whole scene. Yeah,
well, I mean, he's got some megalomania going on of course. But I'm like, okay, I think I know what's going on with the gun. So it was happening. Yeah. That's what, okay. I'm like,
a lot of things were happening.
Even, I don't want to, okay, I shouldn't really think about the logistics of that or anything of that nature, but like, okay, I do have a prediction later about Valeria, but I'll save that for the end of the show.
Well, we'll save it, but yeah.
Well, wow, that was interesting.
But yeah, I mean, overall, I thought this was a really great episode. It showed me a lot more character traits about Pablo. You know, we'll get into more of that, but this was just a really interesting show because, again, it kind of touched back a little bit on the first episode, talking about
a lot of the storyline,
the magical realism, and then also little hints and little drops in there about just sort of correlating a lot of what's happening in Colombia to what's happening in the U.S. So you know, it was a lot of great parallels there. But I felt like this was a a great episode to get just a little bit more of a layer for Pablo that I didn't necessarily consider or interpret before as to sort of one of the motives behind what eventually led him to want to become president of Colombia. And then of course, you know, I still feel like we're kind of lacking on the DEA side as far as information and just sort of really going more in depth with who they are and just their story. But overall, I felt like it was a really great, not only information episode, but a great character-driven episode as well.
Yeah, cool. I agree. We did get a decent amount about the DEA, kind of like how they're going to try to go after him. Some of that stuff is smart. We'll get into that. I mean, the men of always is kind of like the men who have always been in power and that sort of thing. And, you know, this whole episode is about him trying to be able to influence that power. I thought cinematically there were some really amazing shots, especially with him like walking in the field and juxtaposing that against the like him walking into Congress for the first time.
And the rain coming down.
Right. And I a lot more, like you're saying, a lot more about his character and just kind of what's behind it.
Yeah.
And all that stuff. So let's jump on into that.
Dive into it.
Yeah. So we're already talking about Valeria. She's like, you know, basically she's going to help him get connected with Duque. The New Liberals, was that the name of the party there?
He was one of the ministers of justice, I believe.
That was Lara. Lara's the minister of justice.
But I think he was also as well. I
think
he was
okay?
Another one, that he was trying to influence. I think Lara was probably at a higher seat than him. But
yeah, well, it seemed like these guys are something to do with like special interests, and of course they're buying their way in, which is probably not unsimilar to real politics. We won't go into that, but. What did you think of, I guess, him and Valeria there? It seems like, before we get to that, or before I just ask you a question, now I'm going to answer myself, but I like that Tata is smart enough to know,
of course,
what's going on. I like that they haven't written her dumb. I mean, obviously, you know, we talk about this as history, that kind of thing, but I like that she knew.
Yeah.
I don't like that he's doing this while she's pregnant. He has a daughter in this episode. And obviously, we know he's not a good guy, but he seems to have, or at least without, you know, his infidelity, like a fairly good relationship with her.
Yeah.
He seems to be pretty good to her, except for the whole infidelity thing, which is probably maybe the worst thing he can do. What do you think about their relationship, how they've written her?
You know, it's interesting. I actually... of course, read that he was very notorious for having lots of affairs with women.
Of course.
So, you know, and from what I read, there was never any record or testimony that she had stepped outside of their marriage. So, according to, you know, everything that that we've heard and other people's records, Tata has been very faithful to Escobar. So she's somebody who is like, she's in it, she's down for the cause, you know, she's the ride or die wife. But I think that it's really interesting. And you know what? When I saw that scene, it reminded me of so many other biopic movies that I've seen, where you have
somebody in power,
you know, a celebrity or somebody in power who is messing around with other women, and the wife is like, look, you know, just don't bring it into the house as long as you know that I'm, you know, top dog. Right, you know, for lack of better terms. So it reminded me a lot. I mean, I didn't really, that didn't faze me a whole lot, because I think that that's something that, unfortunately, it's kind of a cliche thing that happens. You get to a certain level and you know, you have women throwing themselves at you, and you know, you just it's a part of the life, you know.
Yeah, he almost seems to kind of try to justify it to her a little bit, like, oh, she's in the news and they're interested in me and that kind of thing.
Which, of course, she's not buying it. Which I'm like, you know, good for Tata. I mean, that was just a great, because we haven't really gotten a whole lot of character development from her either. Yeah. So, I mean, it was just great for us to see, you know, I mean, she's obviously very conflicted. Like, she obviously cares and loves about Pablo a lot. Yeah. And she wants to just have a family, you know. And I don't know if she is at all interested or concerned about him moving away from, you know, being a drug cartel or what, you know, she ultimately wants, but she is definitely invested in the relationship. Sure. And I think that her knowing what was going on with Valeria and just her kind of...
I like that look that she gives her when he introduces, like, oh, this is a news reporter.
Hell
and
hath
she
no
was
fury, like
just
a
like
scorn,
daggers.
Man.
I thought the performance was pretty great there.
She's like that thought over there. Yeah.
Yeah, I just like, I mean, I'm just like a big fan of when we don't have to write the female characters, like, you know, kind of like, oh, yeah. I mean, obviously she knows what he's into, you know, but I like her knowing, like, just from an intro, because there was nothing in that intro to, you know, like, hi, this is so and so. Right. There was nothing in there that seemed too familiar, but she knew right away, and I really dug that.
Yeah, women's intuition, it always kicks in. And as much as they try to hide it.
The first time.
Yeah, of course, exactly.
But I thought that was cool, her talking to him. Then she, of course, the thing with the baby happened.
Right. Which, I was mentioning that I mean, of course, there were a lot of new people introduced. We always got to keep up, and you got to like write down and make sure you know everybody's name. Sure. But in addition to that, I was a little confused with the timeline, and maybe the chat can sort of help me out here, because I found out that the daughter, I think her name was Manuela, she was actually born in 71. And I think that this timeline is continuing off of 81 from the last episode.
It seems like it hasn't moved, we haven't had a jump since
a real,
the first episode, I think.
A real jump, yeah. So it was kind of hard, keep watching the episode to sort of keep track of what time period we were in and how far we were jumping and what. So, I mean, hopefully that's something that they can continue to reconcile throughout the rest of the series, because I think that knowing the time is really important, sort of knowing when events happened and where we're sort of heading next. But
who knows what reason they're choosing to do that. If it is she was born earlier or something like that, maybe from just the pure storytelling thing, it continues to move forward with the drama, which is why we're watching anyway, even if all the times aren't exactly right. But I like this stuff with him, with Pablo, like him continuing to move forward with his political aspirations. Last episode he said, I'm not interested in that, but of course we know that he is, and him just kind of steamrolling through the people, basically how much money is it going to take in order for me to do what I want. And again, we've talked about how smart he is. Ortega is the current congressman, and he's going to run as an alternate to him. Wink. Right. And then
suddenly something's going to happen, and he's not going to be. He's not going to be able to run.
Yeah, exactly. Am I going to? But in a way, that's I guess the only way that he can get in there is to be basically look, I'm going to back this new party, the New Liberals here. I'm going to be, when he's talking to the crowds of people, we finally get to see a lot more of that, and sort of appealing to that, he even has that line about I'm not a rich man, I'm a poor guy with money, which is isn't that the same thing? But, him sort of, pointing out specifically, these people in power, they don't care about you, and they won't feed you, and I'm one of you, and all this kind of stuff. This is I think, who is it? I think which character? Carlos compares him to Hitler at some point. Right. And this is all really similar type of stuff to kind of appeal to, look, I'm one of you guys. I'm just trying to fight for you. But ultimately, I think a lot of that has to do with him growing up poor, growing up without much, growing up and seeing these oligarchs and these kind of people in power and never helping people. I mean, sure, doing it illegally is not maybe the way to do it, but him, you can see that there's more than just money and power. Of course, that's the megalomania and all the ego and all that stuff, but I think he really does want to help the people. What do you think?
I mean, I was kind of on the fence about it throughout this episode, because I was like, well, maybe he just has these really twisted delusions of grandeur, and he actually does want to help people. But something that I kind of realized, and then just doing research on the episode, I think that it's not so much, well, yes, obviously we know he gets immunity. He and his guys, they get immunity.
Right, which is even smarter. Yeah.
Right, it's power, helping the people. I'm sure that's a part of it. But I think the biggest thing is that he's very insecure, and he just wants to be legitimized, and he wants to be validated by the people who he was ignored by, people who thought he was invisible when he was poor. When you don't have any money and you're living in a country like Colombia, you're poor, you're nameless, you're faceless, you're kind of almost meaningless in a sense, And so
he wants to matter.
Exactly. And then especially in the scene, when he's going in to, he's finally supposed to be a congressman.
Yeah, well, he is.
And he feels I've arrived. I fit in now with the big kids club. Yeah. And I think that's what he really wanted. He just wanted to be a part of that club of the elitist, of, these high society people who, they separate themselves from the rest of the country and from the lowerlings, as I would assume. So I think that was really his biggest motive. He's a man who has everything, but still he feels incomplete, and that he felt would be something to sort of help to fill that hole that he has.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, they make the point that, at 28, he had, more money than he knew what to do with.
Exactly.
And, we're talking about this, magical realism thing, which was part of the country, but, just that he... I don't think that he's aware of who he really is,
Yeah.
and he has these higher aspirations.
Right. And when you don't know who you are, you want to try and fit in. You'll fall for anything. You want to try and fit in with someone.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and he wants, he talks about like, power doesn't mean you can abuse the poor. He says that kind of thing when he's kind of riling up the crowd there. But we see that like even as he's going into Congress, he doesn't know. Like the security guys tell him like, you got to wear a tie. Dude.
I mean, throughout the entire episode, he goes to the, I guess what you call the official campaign, debate or the speech, whatever. He's wearing jeans and a button-up, shirt. I mean, not the most professional thing that you would wear.
I think some politicians do that too, though. Like,
but
when
I mean,
going to talk to people,
Ortega, he was in a
of course.
suit, So I mean, even though he was running as an alternate, or he was running, as somebody else on his team, just throughout the entire episode, it was just very apparent and very obvious that Pablo was very removed from that world. He didn't really understand it.
The tie is like a very specific sort of like, he doesn't belong here.
He doesn't belong here.
And he doesn't realize it.
He wants to. But he has an obsession for whatever reason for belonging there. And they reject him, and I think that was kind of the start of the beginning of the end. But yeah, it was just, that was really telling for me, for a part of Escobar's character. It's like, no, maybe it's not really the money or the wealth or even the philanthropy. It's more of just being accepted into this club and being legitimized by this government of people who he just wants to be cool.
Yeah.
It's like Breakfast Club. He just wants to
exactly.
He wants to join the Breakfast Club.
He wants to be cool and be able to.
The Colombian Breakfast Club, exactly.
But in this he's going into Congress there, and so we've got this was the other thing, but like he, all these the cinematic scenes I was talking about, where he's like, you got him staring out and you got the skyline behind him,
right?
He's going, you got the two justice statues, I think it was two or at least one, but he's just like, man, I finally gotten there. You got to imagine growing up poor without a name, without a face, without any influence, just under, oppression, essentially, that kind of thing. And he found a way to gain money and power. People are afraid of him. Right. And now he's like, oh, now I'm in here. I can finally maybe affect, what's going on in the country. But he hasn't done it through necessarily hard work. He's done it through bribing people.
Of course.
He's done it. He's done it through killing people and having so much influence that he's covered up all of his criminal record, that there is no record of, him, everybody's like, well, look, he's a drug trafficker. And it's like, well, if you can find the record, prove it,
Or if there is, he makes sure to eliminate anybody who can offer any proof as best as he can.
Yeah,
Which is the irony in it. It's like, no, I should be president, I should be congressman or whatever, because I am here for the people and I want to affect change and I want to do good for the people. But I'm gonna do it by bribing you with every last cent that I have, by murdering your family, and it's just funny how that's how a lot of politicians are, It was a really great insight into, how people make in politics, people make a lot of promises and they say that they want to help, they want to do good, but what you have to do to get there, it's you would never, if you knew the real truth about it, you would never ever look at them as a moral person.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, he paid off, initially he pays off Minister Lara there, and who suddenly has a moment of conscience.
Of course.
He was helped a little bit by the DEA there, but
a lot of people were in his episode, to his own, effect.
Yeah, but ultimately he is somebody who is sort of sickened by this kind of thing, but his sort of like take no prisoners approach to be like, one, we found this photo, after which is the whole thing that we'll get into Steve and Javier, but and then really going for the jugular, and I'm like, dude, you're gonna die. There's no way that, and he almost has like a similar thing of like, because he's doing the right thing, which is good, and bravery and all that kind of stuff. This is a real story. Right. But the method that he goes about it is so brash that he allows his sort of, I think, ego to get involved in it. Even when Steve is like, you should wear this vest because, you're a marked man at this point. But then he's just like, well, look, I didn't do this for, whatever. I did this for the right reasons, which I believe. But at the same time, the same sort of issue kind of that Pablo has in wanting to be in power, and this is a person in power, he gets kind of caught up in that. It feels like. Did you think that at all, or?
I more so took it as, because the real Rodriguez Lara, I think that was his full name, right?
Rodrigo Lara.
Rodrigo Lara. He had, up until that point, and even after that point, he had a really great reputation. And he was somebody who at a very young age, he was interested in politics. I think he was elected mayor of his city when he was like 22 or 23.
Right.
So I can imagine somebody in his position. I mean, he started out with the best of intentions, like a lot of people in politics do. They want to affect change. They want to help people.
Sure.
And he had a weak moment, like a lot of people do.
Yeah, where a lot of money.
Right, a lot of money. And then, of course, the name Escobar, I'm sure at that point he knew his reputation.
Yeah, they know about him.
So it's very difficult in that situation to say no. But I think that he had, a moment of just realizing why he was doing this, why he was there. He was tired of the corruption. And I think in a sense, he was tired of people like Pablo sort of buying their way into their justice system. It's like, no, this is not how we do things. And this is not how things are going to go down. And I think ultimately when he made the decision to out Pablo during that meeting, he kind of already knew what was coming to him. That was my feeling. I had a feeling like he kind of accepted his fate, and he just wanted to do as much as he could to bring them down and to sort of kill Pablo's dream before he eventually himself, I kind of took it as that, kind of as he somewhat felt responsible a little bit for allowing Pablo to be there.
He talks about turning a blind eye, and he basically he's confessing, in public.
He was a part of why Pablo was there. So I think
so he's basically saying, like, I'm going to right this wrong.
Right the wrong,
kind of thing.
And accept the consequences,
Yeah, I just got so they're going to move him to, like, Czechoslovakia or something like that. And like, in 2 weeks. I'm like,
do it today. Like, we should be on a plane now.
Why are we waiting 2 weeks? Or at the very least, be holed up somewhere, witness protection or something. I don't know. But... I really dug that. I like having a character that instead of, we've got this, sort of like, oh, where's the line between right and wrong and that kind of thing with all the characters. But I like a guy who was like, you know what? No more of this. I'm going to go for the jugular. Right.
And
like you're saying, like it's probably going to cost me my life or whatever.
Right. But speaking on that line, I love that moment with him and Steve where, he's like, I'll accept your offer or your gift for this vest or whatever. But what I won't accept is your condescension.
Yeah.
Basically saying, like, don't think that just because you're here in Colombia and you're bringing down this drug cartel who's corrupt and evil, that means that the U.S. is any different. Like, don't think that you can look down,
I like that.
On Colombia and just think of it as like this completely immoral country that has no values and there's no control here. It's like, no, there's a lot of stuff going on in the U.S. as far as narco-terrorism is concerned. So just let that be known. Yeah.
Yeah,
so
that was cool.
Another really great, like I said, I can see that the writers and the creators of this show, they like to just drop little...
Yeah, they do.
Little nudges, like, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Little trail, little breadcrumb there.
Social commentary.
Yeah, exactly.
Never hurt anybody. So Gustavo's like, look, man, you're focusing on the wrong things. What you want and who you think you can become, basically, like, wake up.
Yeah.
Is kind of what he's telling him to. And that's ultimately the moment that he has, we get the sort of he flew too close to the sun, which is the, Icarus kind of thing. Basically you got too close to, something that could ultimately hurt you. And you basically, you're out of your depth here. Like, at this point, like, look, this is who we are.
Right.
We're bandits.
We're bandits,
is what he says to him. You need to focus back on here because, and really he needs to be careful if he doesn't focus on his real business and how he actually made his money, not through property owning and all those clever little things. Yeah, taxi company, and I own a lot of houses, and I'm just a good guy,
Yeah.
If you're not careful, this is where the guys are going to come back in and basically, if you show this sort of vulnerability and no commitment to the business, to the cartel,
exactly,
then you're leaving yourself vulnerable here. And I think that Gustavo is like voice of reason a lot to him, as reasonable as you can be for the business that they are in. But like I saw him as like trying to wake him up. Tata tries to comfort him a little bit, like, they just, they don't get it or something like that.
Right, which I thought was pretty interesting, and I would love to hear your insight on this. It's just to why, I mean, I understand, you know, obviously him being a politician, that means that there's a lot more eyes on them as a cartel as a whole, but there also can be a lot of really great benefits to making to making Colombia a narco state, or to being sort of the head of a country. Yeah. But everybody, you know, I mean, they wouldn't, I mean, well, yeah, some people did explicitly tell him to his face, no, this is a really bad idea, you shouldn't go through with this. But a lot of people, you know, in his team, they were really supportive of Pablo wanting to become president. Yeah. And I just kind of wondered, you know.
You mean like as far as like Gotcha?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much everybody. I mean, you know, Tata, she of course is the loving, supportive wife. But I mean, everybody else seemed to be very, almost scared. Like, no, this is not something that you should be doing. And I just wanted to, I guess, see, like, what did you think of that? Or, you know.
I think maybe, like, it's kind of hard to tell, but I think maybe more of them are worried about the bottom line. Like, those guys don't want to help anybody. Those guys want money and more money and more money and power. I don't see them as like, this kind of seems like this is a distraction. Like, what are you doing? Yeah. One, you don't belong in that club. Yeah. They're never really going to accept you. You know where you belong. You belong with us. This is what we do. This is the kind of people we are. Interesting. I like Gustavo being the one to really point that out to him, because it seems like he's the person that can. Yeah.
I mean, but even Carlos too. He tries to tell him, like, look. Yeah. You tried, but this is not happening.
Well, even Gustavo like makes it real hard. Like, look, if this is what you're gonna do,
then you need to
find somebody else and also you need to find somebody else to run your labs. You know, which, you know, Carlos is like, I'll step on up. You know, Hitler seemed to have some pretty good ideas.
That we can implement right away.
Maybe
these
the
camps.
First time that's ever been uttered. But man, some really great stuff on Pablo. I'm really excited just where they're going with it, because you do kind of feel like some empathy, I guess you can say, for his plight and you know, wanting to be taken from being like a, you know, poor sort of helpless person, helping other poor people and that kind of thing, like, you know, but at the same time, like, it's not completely pure, because it's, you know, obviously he's hurting so many people, killing people in the process. Anyone gets in his way is not going to live or anything like that.
Yeah, his perception, or the way that people see him, or other people's perception of Pablo, it really matters to him. Yeah. You know, like he cares so much what other people think of him.
And that's the cool thing, like wanting to be cool. It's like, kind of like, I want to be accepted by all these people that aren't going to accept me anyway.
And it's just so, I just thought it was really, really hilarious just how the whole episode, he's like, I'm not a bad guy, you know, find the evidence. But it's like, dude, you're burying money in your mother's couch. Yeah. Drug money. Really? Money. He's like, I didn't do it. You know, like the little kid who lies when he steals the cookie from the cookie jar. Like, it wasn't me.
All right, well, let's take a tiny little break and talk about iTunes. Folks, head over to iTunes, find our Narcos After Show, give us a rating and review. It really helps out the network. AfterBuzz has over 100 hours of content every week for TV, and if you love TV, this is the place you should be coming to. Discuss it, dive deeper into it, and discuss it with us, because we love this show.
And quick shout out to the chat. Thank you guys for chiming in on a few of our comments, and a lot of great commentary going on today with this. Awesome. This was a really great episode. So.
Yeah, well, let's shout out. We finally got a review on iTunes. Woo! It's a big day. Let's celebrate with
who is it?
With Coke, I think. Is that how you celebrate? I'm not sure.
Well, that's one way to celebrate. Meet us after the show, guys.
This is from Who is what it says. Who, like maybe who's who? I don't know. Anyway. He or she writes 5 stars, by the way. A 5-star review. If you really like us, give us the 5 stars. Just and very simply stated, says, glad AfterBuzz is recapping this show. How long do you think it took he or she to write this review?
Well,
over under 20 seconds.
Maybe less time than it took you to actually read it.
That's literally how easy it is to do it. So please head over there and give us a rating review on the show. It really helps out the network. And this is a free show, so we'd really appreciate it if you help us out. And we will shout you out. Hoo-hoo.
Thank you, hoo-hoo.
So let's get back in here. This is the stuff I like the most with Javier and Steve. Is, well, one, they set up, the storytellers do a good job of setting up that the DEA, there's sort of an unspoken rule that they're off limits because of Kiki Cameron, or Cameron, I can't remember how to say the last name. But
Camarena.
that is. He basically the Narcos skinned him alive, dismembered his body.
They did a lot of graphic, and it was like over 30 hours that he was tortured from what I had researched, and they basically gave him amphetamines to keep him awake, so he felt every single
brutal
part of it.
Stuff.
Just brutal.
And of course that calls down like the feds or the
it calls
DEA
down
or whatever.
Everybody.
And basically they come in and just start
massacring.
Yeah, exactly.
The narco.
And it's
cartel.
like, look, you will not touch our people, and the message is received.
Very, very clear.
So of course this is why Steve and Javier can go to operate the way they do, and not necessarily be touched. They can kill your cat, which is like, they have the whole like, well, it's like a canine basically. It's like, well, that's a federal offense, man, killing a cat.
Which it was reaching, but I mean, for guys like that who I'm sure don't know any different, I'm sure they bought it.
Yeah, but this is them getting resourceful. In order to best these people, they have to find an angle in. Of course, because of the fear of being like, look, if we really mess with these guys, they're going to come in like with whole teams of people, and then we're no longer going to be business or dead.
Yeah.
So them tying this in and being like, look, because it was like Kiki was like basically the savior of us all. This is the reason why none of these guys are dead. So the whole thing with the passport and these two agents in customs comes back around. I like that they're like, okay, so now we're gonna go after these guys. Which like a cat interrogation system like scene was kind of I don't know comedic to me.
Yeah,
but
like cats out the bag.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that kind of thing.
I mean, I know it kind of felt a little Three Stooges-y to me, just how they kept going around, kind of bumping into each other.
I actually really liked the scene and they kept slapping the guys. It was kind of a fun scene to me.
I mean, and obviously it was more than just the cat, which, God rest poor little Muffins or whatever the cat's name was. Mm-hmm. But, I thought just in that whole telling of that particular part of the story, it gave them a lot more insight as to how much the cartel knows about the DEA that I don't think they were anticipating that they would know. I mean, they were pretty much one step ahead of them every single term. Like they couldn't even get a whole lot of really useful information on who killed the doggone cat. It's like, really? Are we having this much trouble finding out who killed the cat? You know what I mean? And then just going from there, every step of the way, the cartel was always 5 steps ahead of them,
which is good to me. Like it built a decent amount of like dramatic tension in the story. Like, man, how are they gonna get these guys? They are one step ahead, all this kind of stuff. But then it's like, look, you know what? We can't stop him. We can't stop him from being a congressman. Yeah. So you know what? Why don't we just let him do it? Because now there will be a spotlight on him. Yep. And then when we get our evidence, which they're going to keep, looking for,
the country is going to destroy him.
He'll be publicly embarrassed.
Yeah.
And what's this guy with this massive ego? What's the best way to hurt him and tear away his dreams? Mm-hmm. Is basically to let him get let him think he gets what he wants, and then take it away from him. Yeah. And of course, them getting Lara involved in there, and that was to me like I really liked that. We've said like, man, we're not getting enough about Steve, we're getting more about Javier. That's cool. Javier is he's got questionable morals, but I liked it like. Because I think, was it Steve's idea?
I thought it was Javier's.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't remember.
Maybe it was both of their idea. I can't really remember. But
I mean, just going off of that same note, I thought, if it weren't for the fact that this were based on real life events, I mean, I would have felt really, really bad for Steve and Javier, because it just seemed like every single time they tried to get a quarter of a step ahead, they were pushed back 10 feet. So, just with that scene, I think that it was kind of like an aha moment for them. It's like, we're trying so hard to like hit him at this level.
He's got so many people paid off. Yeah.
Let's let him have his Icarus moment and just fly too high to the sun, let the wings burn, once he gets to that level. So I thought that was a great introduction piece, because eventually we see that that's sort of how it all affects bringing him
it's
down.
Basically like we're gonna let him like score essentially so that we can get a victory.
Exactly.
Which is cool because it's going to continue to motivate Pablo further against them. But Oh, by the way, poison. I'm pretty
Poison,
sure is
yeah.
who killed the cat. It seems like that's what happened there.
And they found that out, but it's even still.
Yeah, or at least they knew that he was the one that got the passport, which would lead you to believe that that's
which he was.
Who killed this cat? Heartless bastard.
Foreshadow. I know,
Yeah,
right?
come on.
Just how dare you?
Killing
El
animals.
gato, come on.
Yeah, exactly.
Where's PETA when you need him? But yeah. So
what was interesting to me, so Steve, he's like our all-American hero, that kind of guy, and Javier's got this sort of like, I'll do whatever it takes to take down these guys.
yeah.
Steve, I feel like he's being corrupted by Javier. He's not really questioning any of this stuff. I think that, we didn't know much about him in the pilot, but I don't think that he would have went to these kinds of like methods to make some of this stuff happen. Paying people off, paying Suarez off there to kind of get the information, to tap the phones, all this kind of stuff, which is not great. I see him being kind of like it seems like Javier is going to continue to sort of influence him, as the season goes on here. You have any thoughts about that?
Possibly. I don't think that as much, only because Steve said, from the previous episode, like, I'm in this. Whatever you guys do from now on, I don't care what it is, I want to be included. So he made a very clear statement there that he is down to do whatever is necessary. And while he did, there was a little bit of opposition with some of the methods that Javier did in order to get information. I think that Steve understands that he's not in America anymore. He's in a completely different country where you kind of have to do things a little bit differently as a police officer, as an informant, in order to get information. So I didn't see it so much as Javier was negatively influencing him, just as much as him sort of realizing, okay, Javier is a lot more familiar with Colombia and how things happen here than I am. So I kind of need to take a back seat and just sort of learn a little bit so that, I can get my bearings and really do my job to the best of my ability. And I think that, even though he mentioned that it was the first time he really felt guilty.
Yeah, that was the thing that made me think that, because I don't know.
I know. He did feel guilty, and it's of course that the conscience that always comes in as a police officer. You want to do right, but just things happen, unfortunately, that might lead you down a different path. But I think ultimately Steve, he understands the risks and he understands what needs to be done. It's just when they happen, it kind of just takes him aback a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I wonder, like, well, why was this the first moment that he felt guilty?
Right.
But also, like,
moments.
I don't know. I just thought that, I don't know, there's something about him. Certainly this wasn't part of the DEA training.
Yeah.
Some of these questionable, like especially last episode with them, like, basically just killing dudes and going sort of, renegade there. But I don't know, something about that line about him saying, well, this was the first time I felt guilty that someone, I can't remember the exact line, but I felt guilty that someone was, that
Lara was killed based on the fact that he was helping him,
that he was doing the right thing, which Lara was doing the right thing.
But Lara said, he's like, I'm not doing this for you.
Right, exactly.
So there was, even though, it was a really bad situation, and not that if I were in Steve's position, I would have removed myself emotionally from, feeling guilty about it. But I do think that Steve is kind of recognizing, okay, the little resources that we have to get people to help us, they're being literally shot down at every single turn. And I think that's just, it's becoming difficult for him to accept that and to realize it. And I think that he's now seeking in, this is a different world.
Right. And I just want, like, why is he now sort of surprised by that? I think maybe it's just like a little more of him sort of realizing where he is or something like that. But
I'm sure stuff like this happens, in America all the time, but maybe his experience dealing with something like marijuana where, you have teenagers, you're dealing with a whole different animal. And I think that now he's just, it's in his face now, and he can't really ignore dealing with it emotionally anymore.
Yeah, sure. Let's touch on Connie real quick here before we hit the predictions. But, so Connie, she, like what Steve asked her to move back to Miami, and of course she's like, well, yeah, when you move back to Miami.
Which I like too. Again, we see another version of, on the
a little
DEA
more
side,
about
a strong-willed woman who's like, no, I'm going to stand by my man, and I'm not going to just be weak and just sort of let stuff happen without me. Like, I want to be a part of this in some way, shape, or form. So I thought that was really great, on Connie's behalf.
I like him wanting to protect her too. I think that's cool.
Of course.
Obviously, but also just that like M19 has basically planned it in the where she's working there. Lisa as well, I believe you mentioned.
Elisa, yeah.
And I'm like, ooh, this is cool because it's a promise of more coming with her storyline.
Right, exactly. Which I'm hoping. I mean, there's so many different characters in this story, and I know that for one season it's hard to touch upon everybody, so it'll be interesting. It was a great foreshadowing moment for Connie.
Very cool.
And then just briefly for Gotcha and the Cartel. I mean that's a really great, I guess, predictions moment for us too.
Let's touch on that in predictions.
And now your AFTERBUZZ TV predictions.
Yeah.
So what are you thinking about Gotcha there?
Well, Gotcha and the Cartel, which I was surprised in this episode, he wasn't really the forerunner who was like, yeah, we need to take down Escobar. It was other people that were part of the cartel who were trying to convince him. And obviously he doesn't need a whole bunch of convincing. But I think that they're, with his whole political aspirations, that's going to cause a lot more conflict, and they're going to start questioning Pablo a lot more, and it's going to just lead to a lot more opposition between the cartel.
Yeah, I think the Gotcha knows, I don't think he's necessarily, I think he certainly wants to be the dude in control.
Of course.
Which is what I predicted last episode, but I think that it speaks to what kind of power Pablo really has.
Yeah.
If Gotcha's like, we better be careful about the way that we do
this.
this.
I know. I was very surprised
because he should be like, let's just go get him.
Let's just do it right now.
But it's like,
he's like,
that's going to be a tough one to do because of how many people are loyal to Pablo. So, I got that.
Interesting. Well, now, of course, the Minister of Justice is dead. This is the very start of the Icarus falling out of the sky. I mean, you have now killed the Minister of Justice.
You've killed his dream. Well, and you've killed Pablo's dream, basically.
Well, yeah, but I mean, now, with Pablo having him killed, it's like there's no way that you're ever going to be in politics again. And now I think he has made himself even more vulnerable. So I think this is going to be the beginning of the police, especially just the country of Colombia, going after Pablo.
Starting to mistrust him.
Mistrust him, or just going after him, period. I mean, you can't just kill a minister. These are not just civilians or lower level cops. This was somebody who
he has that impassioned
government.
speech of basically I'm not going down without a fight.
Right.
I figured there was something else, another line that was, to me, was just basically well, if he ends up dead, people are going to put two and one together and be like, okay, well, this is who
obviously did it. So I think now he's going to be dealing with the repercussions of that. And
yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure his whole crew now are like, crap, now what are you going to do?
Yeah. My prediction on Valeria.
Let's hear it.
Velez, I'm starting to think, okay, so she's there. She basically lets Pablo do whatever he wants to do to her, especially with the gun, all that weird stuff.
Oh God, yeah.
And I'm like, is she working for another side? I'm starting to think that
she
her just sort of kind of doing whatever he wants. I mean, she asks about getting in on the money, and he tells her no, and she's fine with that. I'm starting to think that she's got some sort of other motive, and I just can kind of see her, sort of like keeping a log of their interactions and that kind of thing. I don't know. I like that. There was just something about it where I thought she's way too cooperative with him. There's no way that she's, he's like $300,000. I'll pay this guy off. I'll do whatever, I'll do all this stuff, and you're just in it for love, and I'm like, no.
Well, yeah, obviously she's not in it for love. I think that she's in it for other reasons, but that could very well be one of the reasons.
Yeah, well, and it would be the sort of thing that an undercover news reporter would be to kind of get close to get the real story, she's got to sacrifice her body apparently. But
sorry,
shout
out to journalists. There's no way I'm letting you stick at the 38. Anywhere near.
Not recommended.
Anywhere near the goods.
No, not recommended. But
she's down for the cause, so that's what matters.
Yeah, I can just see her wanting to do that. But let's go ahead and get out of here. Where can people find you on the Twitters and
Thanks so
Instagrams?
much for joining us for episode 3. Find me on Twitter, Instagram, Ashley_Chatman. Shout out again to the chat. Thank you guys for your comments, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram, The Isaac Johnson. Also follow my film discussion show, Cocktail Cinema, on Instagram and Twitter. Thanks so much for joining us, folks, and we'll see you next week.
All right, bye.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the host only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.